I wanted to do an update on this story. We talked, I think it was last month, about the Christian Obumseli case. It was a case that had the Black community up in a frenzy. Just a quick refresher, Christian Obumseli was the Nigerian American man who got a lot of flack because of the derogatory things that he said about Black women, about, I think, over a decade, if not more, before he lost his life, and also said some pretty bad things about the Black community in general, some pretty offensive things as it relates to Black Lives Matter, in terms of, kneeling at a football game, his opposition to that type of conduct, and his, opposition to the akata, what they say in Nigerian language. That is kind of a derogatory term. So everything went quiet in this case, and people were wondering what happened. Like, it just kind of, everybody was talking about it. The community was up in a frenzy. We've had Black women, on one side, like, appalled. There were some Black men that stood up for Black women, which I was very impressed and proud to see. But there was a division in that area too with the men. Some men were not. Some men were disappointed. But there's been a lot of updates, okay? First things first, the family of Obumseli went on an interview with Dr. Phil. We're going to go through that interview. It's a pretty long, extensive interview. But essentially, some of the information they disclosed is, number one, Christian Obumseli's body is still in the morgue, you guys. He has not been released to the family yet. It's been over a month now, like a month and a half, and his body is still not released. Another recent update that was disclosed was that initially, when they were calling the officers to find out the status of the case, the investigator told them that they closed the case. So, like, shortly after the incident, they just quickly believed Courtney and closed the case. And as you guys are familiar with Florida law, the stand your ground law, that law is awful. It's deeply flawed. It's letting all these different people, especially in the white community, just saying, get away with murder, basically. All they have to do is just say, I feared for my life, and that's it. So initially, if they didn't do any further legwork, this case would have just went, deep down into the dungeon of nowhere. No one would have heard about it. And the reason why is because we don't have Black women standing up. Even though you see a lot of these Black cases where, the Black man's life is not acknowledged or valued. We've seen it happen with Ahmaud Arbery. Hope I said his name right. Ahmaud Arbery, where initially the district attorney closed the case and alleged it was self-defense. And then we had the Black community, led by the Black women, who protested and fought hard for that case to be reopened. In this case, there was a difference in that the Black community, Black women, and a lot of Black men in the community just said, you know what, no, because of his historical hatred towards the Black community. And it seems like he was more so migrating over into the white community and wanted to conform to the white culture, it seemed like. And so because of that, I believe, this is just my theory, guys, I believe that's why there really wasn't any motivation for law enforcement to really do their job, I'd say. And plus the flaw of the Florida law, let's just be real with the stand your ground, also had a lot to do with it. So they closed the case at first, you guys. So they had to fight. I think it might be opened back up again, but they're not really doing much work on it. Christian's body is just staying floating around in the poor morgue, unfortunately. So they didn't get to have a funeral for him. This is just terrible. And so they found out more information about, oh my gosh, Courtney is a mess, you guys. There were interviews from different ex-boyfriends of Courtney saying that she tried to stab them also. So she tried to stab multiple ex-boyfriends. We already talked about the other ex-boyfriend where she punched him in the jaw and pretty much shattered that poor man's jaw so bad. So she has a violent history of being very violent towards her exes. So it shows that she has this propensity. And one of the things they learned too is that she is an alcoholic, a chronic alcoholic. So we talked about her DUI before, but apparently she had 2 prior DUIs, and she actually was due in court in Austin, Texas, I think a week after she took the life of Christian Obumseli. So she was actually due in court for a hearing or an arraignment for one of her DUIs. And she was an excessive alcoholic. And when she was under the influence of alcohol, her friends said she would become very violent. There's actually a friend that is interviewed in the Dr. Phil interview as well that says that they witnessed her, and we talked about this before, but they witnessed her get very violent when she was under the influence of alcohol, and they would see her hit Christian Obumseli, and she said that she had known Christian Obumseli before he got with Courtney, and that he never was a violent person. He was very kind. He actually was in school. He was studying. He was a double major. One of his majors was engineering. I don't remember the other one. Hopefully we will hear it in this interview. But yes, he was definitely in school, and that his parents were financially supporting him, allegedly. And you guys, if you guys recall before, on Courtney's end, her friend is alleging that he was stealing from Courtney. So there's different things going around. Also, because basically the family had to do all the legwork. They had to do the investigation. They're saying the investigator closed the case, didn't do any work, and all the information I'm giving to you is from the family, who had to get their own investigator to do all of this legwork to find out this information. But they also interviewed a neighbor. And the neighbor said he actually videotaped them arguing, and they were very aggressive and arguing pretty loud. And it seemed to be that Courtney was the aggressor in that incident, allegedly. So let's just take a look at this interview. We'll try to get snips and pieces of it, but that's basically the update in this case. It looks like law enforcement is not really, anxious to really even investigate. They haven't done much at her prior acts of trying to stab prior boyfriends. This woman clearly has issues. All right, so especially with alcohol. Let's just play the interview and see what they have to say.
But very sorry for the circumstance. I just can't imagine how you are feeling right now. I absolutely hate this for you, but we're here to talk about this and get this story out there and hopefully have some impact, right?
Absolutely. We want your audience to know how they found out about the killing, and which was very, very insulting how they found out about it. They had no idea that Toby had been killed. They found out when someone from the medical examiner called requesting they donate the organs.
Which one of you got that call?
I got that call.
So that lady is his mother. And if you guys heard what happened before, the medical physician, no one notified her that he had died. So she found out a day later when they called and said if they could take his organs. That's how she found out. Imagine how anyone would feel. Like, you're not even sat down, to be empathetic, to let this, family member know that your sibling or child has been passed away. It's just, they're just like, oh, hey, can we get your son's organs? Like, isn't that terrible? It's just, oh my gosh, this story is just sad. Even though, yes, I know he said some pretty bad things about black people or black women. It's still a human life, and it's just sad that this case is probably not going to he's probably not going to get justice. The only way is if someone protests. But anyway, let's continue on.
You did not know anything had happened?
No, nobody called me.
I'm shocked. That's just inconceivable. I'm so sorry that happened to you.
Yes, I was at work, and the lady said that she's calling to know if I'll give them the permission for Toby to donate his organs. And I'm like, what? Donate what? I told her, I said, ma'am, I don't understand what you're saying. And she asked me, are you saying that the medical examiner's office has not contacted you? And that was on Monday. I gave my sister the number to call, and that's how we got to know that Toby was killed. The way the news came to me was very, very inhuman and devastating. And we got to know that it happened on Sunday.
So this happened.
That's just so sad how black people are treated in America. And the thing is, Christian Obumseli, I believe, and this is just my opinion, guys, that he was ashamed of being black. I don't think He wanted to affiliate with the black community. Although on his Instagram, he does have some black friends. It just appeared to me from looking through his Facebook and his Instagram. You guys, if you've been following me, we went through his full Facebook over several years, and you can just see that he was really trying to escape the black community, escape the affiliations with the black community. And he thought that he could conform to the white community and basically escape the stigma affiliated with the black community of being hated in America. But no, he passed away, and look how horrible and how he is treated as a black person. It is just so sad. His life devalued. They just treated him as nothing more than organs that could be used on other people. That's how they treated him. Just how horrible they treated his parents. They had no sense of humanity, that this is her son that she birthed. They just treated him like he was nothing. And I just really feel that they treat him like his life doesn't matter. And that's why these movements of Black Lives Matters and the protests, they really do matter, because that's really the only way we can get our voice heard and truly advocate for our value. Because look how sad he was treated. I could just feel this mother's trauma. It's just, all right. Sorry, guys. I just had to stop and talk about that.
Happened on Sunday, and you didn't learn about it until you got this out of the blue call on Monday.
Yes.
And Christopher, you were involved in these calls?
No, I was at work myself. She called several times, so I didn't know. Not until my son called, and I was saying, what's up? Usually he doesn't call me when I'm at work, So I picked up the phone, and he said, Daddy, come home. Toby's dead.
And how did...
God, did you see the dad? You could just see that his heart dropped. That's so messed up, you guys. Dang. And this girl, she gonna get away with it. And I don't get how law enforcement cannot see that this woman is the aggressor. You guys saw that video if you watched my first video on this, and how she looked completely intoxicated and she was under influence of something. And to me, that was the precursor right there. Even if this hadn't happened before and I just watched her on live, I could tell that she was going to go out and do something violent. But just the way she looked so intoxicated, she was completely out of it. And then her history of attempting to stab other people, this woman clearly has a propensity to stab. Oh, and one thing too that they found out, her defense is that she threw the knife at him and that it just happened to just stab him when she threw it. That doesn't even make sense, does it, guys? I would think if she threw the knife at him across the room, that's her claim, it would have just bounced off him if it did hit him and then fall. It's not going to just immediately just stick into a very vital vein. Her whole defense doesn't even make sense.
Did you find out, Jeffrey?
I was on my way to work. My uncle called me, and he told me to come home, that my brother had passed. And but I couldn't believe anything that happened. This is unreal. His birthday was literally in about a week.
At this time, the family still doesn't know the details as far as how Toby was killed. And so the entire family is now trying to inquire and investigate as to what happened. So Jeffrey and I contact the detective, and he states that, that he's busy, they don't have any details to give us at this particular moment. He'll call us back. We call back, I think maybe an hour later, and he was very dismissive. He was like, you guys need to give me time to do my job. We're saying, okay, well, can you just share anything that you know? All we know is that our family member has been killed. And he was just very, very cold. He wouldn't tell us what occurred until finally, when he called later on Monday evening, and he stated that, based on Courtney's reporting, that Courtney had killed him in self-defense, and that there was enough evidence for him to, close the case, close the investigation at that particular time.
Wow. So you seen them, they were repeatedly calling to check on the case, and he was being evasive, basically lying to her, saying, let me do the job, when the whole time he already had closed the case, you guys. He already had moved on to another case. So in this case, they had to do all the investigative work. They had to interview the witnesses. They had to find the ex-boyfriends, get the statements. They've been doing all the work for the investigators. Investigators did nothing. That is just, oh my gosh, this is just, it's disgusting. And the reason why they could do that, and that makes sense now. You remember when Courtney was basically out drinking? She already knew that case was closed. She knew the case was closed already. So she was like moving on her life, got away with murder basically. And that's probably making me think why she dates black men. Because she already knows in America, black lives aren't treated as though they matter. They don't do a deep, thorough investigation on the deaths of of people in the black community. They just toss it away like it's nothing. And so I think that could be one of the underlying reasons why I believe she dates black men, because it's like she can get away with things. That's my theory. Who knows though?
This was on Monday.
This was Monday. He
Within
had
24 hours.
within less than 24 hours, he had enough information to conclude that this was a domestic dispute, and based on the reports that he had, that was all the information that he needed.
So less than 24 hours. So that means, you remember when we watched the TMZ video and you could see her, she was all bloody and everything when they were questioning her. I think they already had in their mind that they were going to close the case right then and there. That's why you could see how she was just kind of chilling there. She was handcuffed, but she was chilling, and she's like, leaning down with her dog, licking the blood off of her, which was very sinister. And she's relaxed because I think they were just trying to get her statement, and she's saying that he broke in her house and everything. And they already, in my belief, is they already closed that case right then and there. You could just see how there was a lack of any form of emergency. You could just tell that they just really didn't have much of any sense of urgency or care. They were just kind of having a casual conversation with her as she's sitting on the carpet, talking, leaning down to her dog. So I believe within that time frame, after they wrote that report, they probably went in and closed the case. That's what I really think happened. And they didn't do any further investigative work. All these friends are saying that this woman was violent. They didn't even take any ounce of testimony or statements. That if that's not a miscarriage of justice, I don't know what is.
And what's very disturbing about that, the autopsy would not have been concluded within 24 hours. So therefore, for any detective to make that statement, prejudging without conducting an investigation, is totally irresponsible.
I haven't heard the 911 call because they haven't released it, but he was supposedly found stabbed after police had responded to what they describe as a domestic violence call that 911 received, made by Courtney.
Well, we don't know due to the fact, as you indicated, they have not released it whatsoever. But most important, we do know at that point, there were two individuals in the apartment. One is dead. The other one is the only other person. And
so that clarifies something. That clarifies something in the case, because when we got the news report said that they were outside. It was very loud and aggressive. Witnesses saw it, and that he had bled out near, I believe, a Lamborghini outside. So based on this statement from the family law attorney that represents the family, it appears as though the altercation occurred inside the residence. And I think that's when she stabbed him in the neck, being aggressive. And my theory is, because here's the thing. They said that the statements are that Christian and Courtney broke up the day before, allegedly. That's what the statements are. And that he was kind of still residing there, or still coming and sleeping in the common areas because he didn't have anywhere to go. I mean, mind you, they're from Austin. They move all the way to Florida. So he's kind of, they live in the same residence. So he kind of doesn't have anywhere to go. And his family is financially supporting him. So even though they broke up the day before, I mean, he really doesn't have anywhere to go. So, you could see on her live before this all happened, she was definitely intoxicated with alcohol. She was very labored in her speech, slurred in her speech. She just looked like she was drunk or something, or on drugs. And he might have came in the house after the live, and that's what made her just lose it. Like, why are you back here? And they got into a violent argument. That's what I think happened. And she was being aggressive towards him, and then she ended up stabbing him to like, get out of my house, da, 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 da. Like just being aggressive, because that sounds like her nature. It sounds like she's very violent with every boyfriend. And if you watch that prior interview that she did with Fresh and Fit, I think that's the name of the show, she talks about being with wanting to be with black men. But there was a particular black man celebrity that she had dated that she mentioned, and she was like, but no, 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 don't contact him. No, because he's gonna make me look bad. You know why she said that? Because she probably almost stabbed him too, and he was gonna tell, them that, hey, this woman is violent and crazy, and when she gets drunk, she's crazy. He probably was gonna say that. That's why she was trying to cover it up and was like, don't, please don't interview him. No, he's gonna make me look bad. Because she knows that she's a problem. She knows that she has really terrible violent tendencies. And so that's why she didn't want Fresh and Fit to interview her prior ex, because he would have disclosed her violent tendencies.
At that juncture, she had given two different versions to the detective. One version that she allegedly threw a knife at him, and the second version, maybe she just stabbed him. However, Courtney, to this day, has not been arrested.
So that's sick. They just took this woman's word for it. This is like a case of white privilege. She gave him two different statements. She gave the officer, first she claimed she threw the knife at Christian Toby, and I talked to you guys about that a little earlier, that didn't make sense. Just throw, unless she's like a professional knife thrower, there's no way that the knife would have just like, stabbed him and hit a vital artery or whatever. And then she claimed that, oh, I just might have stabbed him. So like that right off the bat should have given the law enforcement a red flag. Like something's not right with her statement. She can't even give us an honest statement. Let's look more into this. Let's get further statements from other people. But that's not what they did. They just took her word for it and they closed the case. They didn't interview any neighbors. Even the news reporter who interviewed that other neighbor before, the one that said he had saw Christian, if you watch my other video, there was an interview that was on the news reports, and there was a gentleman who said that he saw Christian Obumseli, try to reach over and slap her or whatever, but he didn't. He just kind of swung at her. But it looks like the officers didn't even interview him. It was the news reporter that got the interview. So it's like they didn't do any work on this case. They just took her word, even though she had inconsistent statements. She couldn't even give an honest, like very straightforward answer. She had two different variations of what could have happened. And that didn't give them any red flags. They just like, oh, well, she's a pretty blonde girl and we'll just believe her and dismiss the case. This is just sick.
It wasn't until I set up a meeting with the state attorney's office after the police conduct their investigation is that we were able to get some assurance that an investigation would take place. So it is inexcusable for any person to have to endure and be treated the way they were treated. And to this day, they have not even been able to bury Toby because the body is still in Miami-Dade County in the medical examiner's office.
But why does this always have to happen? Do you guys notice a common theme in America? I mean, it happened with Ahmaud Arbery, and it happened with Breonna Taylor and all these other Black individuals, where these cases get closed and there literally has to be either a protest or they have to go to a higher authority, state's attorney. They got to go attorney general, somewhere higher, just to get investigations. Why do we have to go the extra mile just to get our cases heard, just to get quality investigations? You can clearly see there's an unequal application of law enforcement and investigative practices as it relates to the Black community, because you can clearly see they did not treat him like a regular human being. They just closed this case outright, and they had to go to the state's attorney just to get an investigation. Why do we have to keep doing that? Why do we have to fight for justice? Why can't we have equal justice under the law? This is just sickening, pure sickening, even though, yes, there's a lot of the Black community are appalled by this guy's stance on things. And, I didn't like what he said either, but I'm all for the fact that he's a human life. And this is just very sad. He seemed like a type of dude that wasn't really violent. It seems like, based on the friends, that she was always abusive towards him, and he would make excuses for her based on the statements. They're saying that, she would hit him and beat him and things, and he would be like, she's not really like this when she's sober. She's only like this when she drinks. So he would make all of these excuses for her, and he just let her continue to abuse him. So it's interesting that he worshiped his preference so much that he was willing to lower his standards, and he was willing to undergo domestic violence because he was repeatedly abused physically and emotionally. It looks like she'd go out and just yell at him whenever she was intoxicated. And he lowered his morals based on his derogatory terms towards black women, saying, oh, all we do is shake our ass. He was willing to be with a woman that was an OnlyFans. So he lowered everything and gave up all of his values as a man, I would say, for his preference. And then he gave up his life. He basically gave his life for his preference. And it's like, it's so sad. And then now, he tried so bad, you guys, to escape the black community. He didn't want to affiliate with us. And even though he did all that and assimilated into the white community, he was still treated like a black man that doesn't have value in this country, that doesn't get equal investigative work done on their cases, and are treated like they don't matter, like they're just nothings. That's how they treat us. And so this should teach a lesson, you guys, to people in the black community. There's so many people in the black community saying, oh, I'm not going to date in my culture. I'm going to just date it out of my culture. I don't want to be around black people. But the reality is, when you're in situations as it relates to the law, I mean, in terms of even safety, trying to have someone investigate your case even when you're alive, you are still a black man or woman. And so you need to embrace who you are and stand up and advocate for black issues, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many times you run and try to be a part of other cultures or communities to think you're escaping who you really are, escaping your reality. At the end of the day, when all things are said and done, you're still black. So that's just what a lesson I feel like we need to learn from this one. But let's keep going, guys. I'm going off on a tangent.
And what is your understanding of what Toby died from?
He died as a result of being stabbed. Obviously, as he bled to death.
Do you think his killing has been downplayed in Courtney's favor?
Coming up.
Is she a professional?
Are you addicted to
this? That all is going to play.
He would
Not have any weapon.
that doesn't make sense to me. Is she a professional knife thrower? Even an important point to amplify is that we were told by the detectives that Courtney reported that he was some distance away, and she thinks that she threw a knife at him, and that knife hit his clavicle, puncturing an artery, and that's how he died. And so I asked the detective, that doesn't make sense to me. Is she a professional knife thrower? How does someone throw a knife 10 to 20 feet away and that fatally stabs a person?
Yeah, you would think a law enforcement or an investigator who has all this expertise and training would know this common sense that woman was making up a complete lie, and that would discredit her statement and would require them to look further into this case. I mean, you have a layperson. All of you guys on this live can clearly, say that common sense, that story doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't stand in credibility, right? So why is an investigator just dismissing that and closing the case? Doesn't that smell fishy? Like there's just an injustice, immorality, unethical processing of this case. It just doesn't make sense to me.
you seen the medical examiner's report yet?
No.
Still haven't seen that?
Haven't. Florida is a stand your ground. You can use self-defense, but only when deadly force has been threatened to be used against you. So what we do know is that Toby did not have any weapon. There have been witnesses that we have discovered. One previous boyfriend has indicated that she attempted to stab him on more than two occasions. There is an individual that was visiting that apartment that doesn't know Toby or Miss Courtney, and they videoed an incident before where Courtney being downstairs trying to do harm to herself, and Toby was the person that was trying to calm her down. We've located witnesses that the police have not even interviewed that Courtney
got into an argument after allegedly drinking, and apparently she was showing very physical behavior against Toby.
Well, let me ask some questions here.
Wow, so let's back that up. So, first and foremost, can you see the issue here? Why does the family law attorney and the family have to do the investigative work? That's the first problem, right? The law enforcement should have did that. Number one. Number two, you can see a long pattern of this woman being destructive. First, statements from ex-boyfriends saying that she tried to stab him. Then you guys could see that camera that was recording, seeing that she was trying to physically harm herself. And you can see Christian Obumseli just looking at him, trying to be a caring boyfriend, trying to save her, stop her from harming herself. It just looked like, just looking at that video, if you guys just seen it, just how it seemed like he was caring, like really trying to help this girl. But at the same time, it's kind of sad that why was he putting himself through all that? Because based upon just looking at his Instagram, it looks like he was with her for at least a year. So he had to put up with a lot of abuse just to sacrifice all of his values for his preference. It's just like, man, imagine, okay, let's flip the script, guys. Imagine if he was with a black woman and she was doing that. Do you think he would have stayed with her? Put in the chat, let me know, yes or no. Yes or no. Y'all know if a black woman was with him and she was in OnlyFans, or she was being violent or trying to harm herself, he would have broke up with her the first month. So it's like, why are these men in the manosphere, they're willing to put up with abuse and even to the point of losing their life for their preference? That's a question we need to ask. It's like the same things that they are appalled about, they say about black women, they are yet willing to accept from their non-black girlfriend. It's just, I don't know, it doesn't make sense.
Does he have a history of being violent with girlfriends in the past? Has he ever been charged with assault or domestic violence with any girls that he's dated before?
No, he hasn't.
He went to high school in Dallas and Plano, right?
Yeah, Plano East Senior High School.
And then Texas Tech?
Yes.
And you say you were at work. What kind of work do you do?
I'm a nurse.
You're a nurse?
Yes, sir.
And you were, what kind of work do you do?
I'm a technician.
And you were on your way to work?
Yes, I was on my way to work.
What kind of work do you do?
I'm a project manager. I work in the pharmaceutical healthcare space, biotech and pharma.
All right. What kind of work?
And if anybody's familiar with the Nigerian community, the culture, they put a lot of emphasis on education and higher careers. So it's very typical. I've seen a lot because I'm friends with a lot of Africans. You see a lot of individuals in nursing. So right off the bat, when she said she was a nurse, I wasn't surprised because that's very common. I know a lot of Nigerians and Africans who are nurses. And then you saw that the older son was in pharmaceutical, project manager, and also the father has a very prestigious, highly education type career. So you can tell that just in the African community and this Nigerian family, it's very, very, each of them have high accolades, high educational background, even to the point where Christian Obumseli, he was pursuing his engineering career. So that is very common. I just wanted to give you guys that background, that this is typical of what I've seen in the African community, especially the Nigerian community.
I'm an attorney and a food blogger.
And Toby he was studying business, right?
Yes, he was studying.
At
Yes,
Tech?
yes. He wanted to be an engineer, but then he also wanted to do business as well.
I asked all of y'all what your occupations and careers were. What did you know about her occupation and career?
Toby had told the family about his new girlfriend when he came home for Thanksgiving in 2020. And so he shows us her Instagram, and he has stated that, she was an OnlyFans model. And I just remember telling Toby, is this something that you're going to be serious about or whatnot? But he was really excited. Unfortunately, once they started dating, Toby stopped coming around.
The first time
See, this is what really disgusts me. I'm just gonna keep it real, because I know I've dated an African before, and they're big on education, especially if you bring home a girlfriend or a boyfriend. They better have some type of accolade or career or education. And I know if they brought a black woman home, and that Nigerian family, and they said she was an OnlyFans, they would have been in an uproar. They would have been speaking, in their language, because that happened to me before when I went to my boyfriend's house when he was from Ghana, and they want to know your education. So why is it that they gave this woman the leeway? They knew she was an OnlyFans. I was thinking, my theory was that he lied when he first brought her home and just didn't disclose that. But clearly he disclosed it based upon, what she's saying. And they didn't say anything. They just were like, oh, okay, are you sure about that? I'm telling you guys, if he brought a black American woman home and told his family that she was in the OnlyFans, they would not have been together. They would have been appalled. But then they gave this woman a pass because of her color. They basically let him date this woman that was an OnlyFans. And I use that word let, probably not in a proper form, because he can basically date who he wants. But I'm saying they didn't show any type of disappointment or, tell him, hey, look, I don't think this is the right woman for you. She doesn't even have any education, career. It just seems like it's kind of like the hypocrisy there, because I know, based on my experience with the African community, they are very big on, the person that you bring home needs to have, a high educational background, career, some type of prestige. So that rubbed me the wrong way too.
Laid eyes on Courtney was a TMZ video the day of this tragic event, and with your permission, can we take a look at that?
Coming up.
You should go.
Just horrified.
I'm angered to see that video. She's kissing her dog. There's nothing about her body language that demonstrates remorse or an understanding of the seriousness.
And you guys already know about that. I'm gonna try to see if we can get to the friend. Let me see. This is the attorney, as you guys know, of Courtney.
What he said.
This was not a crime. Courtney's innocent. She acted in self-defense. And there should be no charges filed in this case. And we're confident that when the state attorney conducts their final review along with the City Miami Police Department, that they'll find that there's no case here.
Okay, so let's explain that part. So when he talks about the city attorney or state attorney, basically that was after the case was reopened. So as I mentioned, within 24 hours, the local officers closed the case. I believe, my theory is, right after they took her statement, they already weren't going to arrest her. I believe that. They just went and finalized their report, and they were like, this case is closed. That's probably what they did. Then the family went and elevated the case up to the state attorney, and now the case is reopened for them to investigate. So when he is referencing that in his statement, that's what he's talking about, the fact that it's been reopened, and he's thinking that once the state attorney looks into it, it's going to be closed once again. So that's kind of where it is right now.
It was clearly a toxic relationship, had their ups and downs, and unfortunately it culminated with his death.
He says there is no doubt the two of them had a tumultuous relationship. Moreover, there is evidence that Courtney was a victim of physical, emotional, and mental abuse at the hands of Obumseli. That night was no different, and Courtney had the right to defend herself out of fear for her life.
Where is the evidence that Courtney stabbed and killed my son in self-defense? Was there any marks of Toby's hand?
We were told by the detective that Courtney reported that she was choked twice. And the detective also stated that there were no injuries to her neck, no markings, no nothing.
Wow, so that's strike two, you guys. So first she had inconsistent statements as to how it happened. She claimed she threw the knife, then she claimed she stabbed him. Strike one. Strike two, she has no bruises on her neck to basically confirm her allegations that she was choked. It just seems like this was a complete miscarriage of justice. They just blindly wanted to cling on to any little statement she said so that they can hurry up and close the case. I think when they went there, they saw a big black guy, and a blonde, lady, and they already had their story in their mind of what happened. I don't think they really even needed to talk to her. They were already going to close the case, but they just needed her to give them something because they didn't even look into this, all the inconsistencies. This woman said, oh God, this is just.
He stated that there were bruises on her arm and legs. And then he later on stated that those bruises were not sustained that night. We also have
Wow.
several people that are closest to the couple report that she was aggressive. She was very jealous, very possessive of the people that she dated. The friends report that when she was under the influence of alcohol and drugs, that she got to be very violent. I remember asking the detective, did she have any defensive wounds or anything like that? And it was, again, like, we have to protect her rights,
Wow.
her freedom. It was all about protecting Courtney.
Wow.
And so I'm just like, well, sir, please, someone died here. There's a possibility that she may not be telling the truth.
And I'm really glad they're speaking out about this, because if they didn't, as you can see, because the Black community is just done with this case, period. So they're done. So if they didn't speak out and try to really push this forward, what ended up happening is, as it's doing now, the case would have died down. People would have forgot about it. And all she would do is get with another Black man and probably end up killing him too. This woman probably going to become a serial murderer, a serial killer, because she's going to probably stay in Florida and keep getting her different Black men and basically getting away with stabbing them, saying, oh, it was self-defense. Because once you get away, like these people, once they get away with one of them, they just keep doing it because then they feel invincible. So I'm happy that they're speaking out, and hopefully there'll be something done. I don't really have much optimistic in this case, but we shall see, right?
Just remember asking, were photos taken, and the detective said no. And before we left, we pleaded, just like my cousin just stated, can you please take a second look? And no.
If she's claiming that she had to use self-defense, there will be evidence consisting of some sort of injury. What are photographs of an injury, and what is the basis for a justified use of deadly force?
Well, Frank Prieto says that there is competent and substantial evidence that she is the victim of domestic violence and, in fact, possible human trafficking. Do you know what he's talking about?
Have no idea. That would undermine the self-defense, because human trafficking is...
So that's the thing too. You guys have to look at all the facts together. She's claiming she was involved in human trafficking. However, as you guys heard the first initial statement when he brought Courtney home to his family, he already told her she was an OnlyFans. And if you look back in her history, she has been an OnlyFans way before Christian Obumseli came on the scene. So it doesn't make sense now, all of a sudden she wants to change her story and say she's a victim of human trafficking. Basically, she's being coerced into, engaging in these type of videotape things. Apparently, guys, too, on her OnlyFans, he was involved in it. There's videos of him and her. A YouTuber actually had like the full videos. I'm not going to go through all that, but there's a YouTuber out there who had the full videos, and if you join that person's Patreon, you could see it. But he was involved in it too. There are rumors that there's actual videos of him doing it, and on those videos, they said that the person that watched it said that Courtney looked like she was not interested in, being romantically or, physically involved with him. She looked like she was not really into it, and he was. So that part too just makes me think, maybe she was just using him as like just the image, of having a Black man around, but I don't think she really was truly into him based upon what people are saying who saw the OnlyFans videos.
Is when you prostitute someone for economic reason, you have them against their will. And so if he's suggesting that that is the basis of the motivation behind Ms. Courtney taking Toby's life, that undermines the self-defense within itself. But that is clearly not credible.
Well, is y'all understanding that Courtney's implying that your son was pimping her out?
Coming up.
6'2", He's a muscular guy. He played college football, but in no way, shape, or form did he have an intimidating stature or, a threatening presence. Everyone who comes in contact with Toby would describe him as very jovial. He likes to joke around a lot, but mostly is that he's calm.
Toby's grandmother, who is 93 years old, she is really devastated. And each time she asks, has anything been said by the police or the investigators, the answer is no. So I don't know. And the gap can never be filled.
Man, can you just look? Did you look at each of the faces of the family members? Look at the mom. She looks so in deep agony and pain. I can't imagine. She looks like she just doesn't get any sleep. She's just living this constant pain and just heartbreak of losing her baby boy. I believe he was the youngest. And you can just look at the father. So just look at their faces. You can look and see the pain in their eyes. It's very sad.
What would you say to this woman if she's watching this right now? What would you say to Courtney?
Coming up.
A few months in, it turned.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for being here and joining us in this conversation today.
So this woman here, she is going to be anonymous, but I suspect it's probably one of those, the lady that was featured on the interviews. She's on the news before, earlier last month. And I think it's the same lady that did the Twitter post. I honestly think that. Just listen to her voice. They kind of like change her voice a little bit, but if you just pay attention, I think it's the same lady, in my opinion.
Of course.
Now, I understand that you and your boyfriend did have the opportunity to witness Toby and Courtney together. What did you observe?
In the beginning, they seemed very in love, and they were having a lot of fun. And a few months in, it turned into something pretty dark.
You say it turned pretty dark. Are you talking about that verbal abuse and physical abuse?
Yeah, I mean, we knew Toby before he started dating Courtney. So, to see someone like him who was always like bright and like social turn into someone that was like always being pulled away, and you could visibly see like how the relationship started to stress him out.
And who was doing the abusing?
Courtney, 100%.
So it was always her that you observed being abusive to him, not him abusing her?
Correct. It would be something where she would get upset over the smallest things, and then she would have to like pull him outside, and then it always escalated into us hearing her screaming at the top of her lungs. Over time, yeah, we did see some physical violence on her end.
And what
this
form did that take?
This is the part that disappoints me about the friends. Like, after the fact, they're like, oh yeah, we've seen some violence. Number one, how come they didn't intervene and tell him to walk away? How come they didn't try to, tell him, dude, you need to leave this woman. She's not good for you. Or at least report, give a statement to law enforcement or something. It felt like they just kind of sat there and watched this man get abused. I mean, of course he's a grown man, he can walk away, but I mean, they saw all of this red flags and it felt like they didn't really do anything. So again, I feel like there is some form of responsibility of the friends too, to report or try to intervene and talk to him at least. So I don't like that either. They're just saying we saw all this and they didn't do anything. They just sat there as a witness just watching it.
She would be like hitting him on the chest or like on the shoulders.
You said that dating her for him was a, quote, full-time job.
With her job, he was catering to her full-time, and, not to say that he was miserable, like, he had fun traveling and stuff with her, but with that came the dark side of her always, like, screaming and fighting with him.
How do y'all feel hearing some of these stories from someone that had the opportunity to observe them together?
Toby is a very caring young man, always ready to help where he can help. But unfortunately, I agree with her that it ended up on the dark side.
And You've been very careful to say that other than the observations that you've made firsthand that you can attest to, that the other things that you're talking about are just things that you've heard or learned or just allegations that need to be investigated and looked into.
Correct. You can speak to anyone in the downtown scene here that she's worked with or has partied at, and everyone has stories, but she has a past. Unfortunately, this time it went too far, and we never once questioned whether it was a thing of self-defense. We knew there was a lot of violence going on there, and we never thought it would go this far, but there's no question in our mind. Toby was a victim. He was a victim 100%.
Well, I appreciate you being candid about what you know to be true and what.
So that's essentially the whole essence of the updates. It's just sad, you guys. There's apparently they're saying there's another people in the town that saw that this woman was aggressive and they did nothing about it. The case is with the state's attorney right now, but I don't know, guys. I don't have too much optimism about this case. And I think the fact that, the Black community has took a stance, which I rightfully respect, because there's a different era that's happening. There's a different mindset that if you are not going to stand with the Black community in life, people are not going to stand for you in passing either. That's just the way it is. But at the past, more than likely, my theory is that she was the aggressor. She was intoxicated with alcohol that night or that day, and she was very irritated with him. I think she despised him at this point when she broke up with him. Probably there's an allegation he was stealing her money. I don't know, because the family claims that they were financially supporting him at the time. And that sounds kind of consistent with what I've seen sometimes in the African community, sometimes with their kids when they're of his age and still trying to get through school. They'll provide some type of support to help him get through that. So that makes sense. But I think that she was getting tired of him, just based on the statements from other people who've watched the OnlyFans. Also, if you look at her demeanor in some of the videos on his stories, because he has a bunch of stories on his Instagram. If you just click on the different stories, you can just tell he was way more into her than she was into him. I think he was really proud of being with her, this woman who has high, followers, 2 million followers, and he was really into the OnlyFans thing, which was very contradictory of his alleged, disgrace of the Black woman shaking their behind on TV, but he's with the woman that's displaying her entire body on internet. Make it make sense, you guys. But I think he was more into her than she was into him. That's the way it looked like. And I think she started getting just disgusted with him, just completely just annoyed by him. That's what I think. And I think she was under the influence of alcohol that day. And he came in the house, they broke up the day before, allegedly. That's what people are saying. One friend said they broke up a month before. So there's just a variation as to the time frame of when they broke up. But either way, if they were broke up at the time, he was allegedly still staying in the house in the common areas. But I think her being, under the influence, her inhibitions are lowered. She tends to have a violent, behavior when she is under the influence of alcohol, based upon this friend's statement in the Dr. Phil's video. So I think that her real feelings and disgust and just utter sickening of him, period. She just didn't really care for him. When he came in that house, I think it enraged her because she was so fed up and tired of him. And that made her react in violence, because based upon the prior boyfriends that have been with her, that's her way of reacting when she's under the influence. She stabs people. She broke the jaw of, a very well-known bodybuilder. So she just has this violent reaction to things that when she doesn't get her way, or just, gets angry about anything little small. That's why my theory is that just the fact of merely seeing him, his very presence in the house, is what enraged her, because based upon statements from the friends, she gets mad at every little thing. So his mere existence in the apartment, I believe, is what enraged her. Because she was like, I am tired of you. When are you going to leave? Leave my house. And just went, ballistic and stabbed him. Another thing too is I think she probably did something like this before. And he has constantly put up with all this abuse, and that's what cost him his life. A lot of the other exes that were in her life, they left her. They left her after she was, trying to stab them, broke the other guy's jaw. They were done with her. And that's why they're still living. So, Christian Obumseli was willing to sell his soul for his preference. That's what I feel he did. He sold his entire soul to this woman and ended up costing him his life. It's very sad, you guys. I don't know if there's going to be justice for this guy, but I'm still going to keep updates on the story, as in my opinion, I do have people are going to be mad at me, but I have a sense of forgiveness for him. I understand that he did talk bad about black women. I don't really like what he did. And you're not going to see me go out and do a protest for this guy, but I have empathy for him as a human being. And I still believe that he should receive equal justice under the law. I feel like the local authorities did not do a sufficient job. There were way too many indicators that this woman's statements lacked credibility, and they did not do their due diligence to corroborate what she said by talking to various witnesses or talking to prior friends or different people, neighbors who have actual videotape. They have actual videotape of her acting irrational and merely going to harm herself. Another thing that's missing is those prior 911 calls. As you guys are familiar, there were many 911 calls made leading up to this tragic end. So the questions are, who made those 911 calls? What was the context of those interactions? Because that's really going to bring a completeness to the story as to who really was the aggressor in those prior incidents. If it shows that there's been many reports where he's calling the police, to calm her down, or she's going to harm herself, or there's neighbors calling the police because they see her acting irate, then again, that's another miscarriage of justice on the end of the local authorities, who did not do their due diligence to really look into this case. They just closed it right out. I think they closed it outright. That is truly my belief, you guys. I really think that. But you guys, just let me know what you guys think. I just feel very deeply saddened for this guy. I'm going to definitely say a prayer for him and his family. I think that his life mattered. It's sad that he was pursuing his dream of double majoring in business and engineering. Looks like he had a great calling on his life and was going to be very successful, and he died so young. It's so sad. And his poor, being a black soul, he thought that this is something that we can learn from this, is that he thought that he could escape his blackness by conforming to the white community. And we have to realize that that is not reality. We are black no matter who we affiliate with. We are black no matter what spouse we choose. You have to still understand, if you are in the black community, who you are in this society, and stand strong with the black community no matter who you choose to be with. It's not an issue for you to deviate and be with a different culture, but recognize who you are in this society, recognize how society has historically treated the black life and devalued the black life, and you need to stand strong with the black community and not talk down upon a community that you will be a part of through life and through death. And that's the thing that I think Mr. Obumseli failed to see. He, despised, I would believe Colin Kaepernick, which is my theory, when he made that comment saying, there's, proper times to kneel. And I don't think it's proper in football fields to do that, or football games. That made me really think of Colin Kaepernick and him showing a disdain for his stance for equal rights. I think that he was wrong for that, respectfully. So I'm going to say I respectfully think he was wrong for that, because he was disloyal to the black issues that plagued this community. And sadly, he lost his life. And in death, his life is not being valued. So just a lesson to all of us. Yes, you can date out of your culture, not an issue. Do whatever you want. But at the end of the day, you still have to recognize the color of your skin. And you have to still stand strong and vocalize, advocate, get involved in politics, voting, or whatever you need to do to speak out in regards to the unequal application of the law as it relates to the black community. All right, thanks guys. Have a beautiful night.